Reddit's dark side covers sensitive topics and could be a possible trigger for some. These stories are narrated exactly how they are written by the original poster. Viewer discretion advised.
Welcome back to another episode of Reddit's Dark Side. If you enjoy this show as much as I enjoy making it for you, I just ask that you guys leave a review down below. Now, let's get right into the stories. A young woman tried to lure me into her car late at night, posted by Will_droid. This encounter would have happened a little over 10 years ago. I would have been 26 to 27, male at the time, but I can not 100% remember what year this was now, but it was some time from 2011 to 2013. At the time, I was frequently going out with my friends to bars and parties and hanging out until pretty late most weekends. The friend's house that I usually hung out at was on a side street just off a main road where a lot of popular and crowded bars and restaurants were. You had to park on the street at his house. And during the weekend when it was busy, it was pretty common to have to park a number of blocks away. The street closer to the bars was pretty nice, but if you went a few blocks in the opposite direction, it got a little sketchier at night. After a night of hanging out, I had to walk back to my car pretty late, which was parked a number of blocks away towards the slightly sketchier area. This was during the winter, so I was wearing some kind of heavy sweater or pullover and a beanie/knit hat. This detail is only important as you couldn't really gather much idea about what I looked like from a distance in the dark, aside from my general height and build. There wasn't much through traffic as you got further away from the bars, and the roads were pretty dark without any street lights. As I was walking down the sidewalk, a car started slowly creeping down the street, matching the pace as it pulled up beside me, and then stopped. The windows of the car rolled down, and driving the car was a young attractive woman who said that I looked cold and I should let her give me a ride to where I was going. She seemed very friendly. I indicated that I wasn't parked far away and appreciated the offer, but was going to just keep it walking. She then tried really hard to convince me to get in the car with her since it was so cold. No small talk to establish any information about me to make sure I wasn't a weirdo, just asking me to get in the car pretty aggressively. Based on what I was wearing and how dark it was, there was no way she really could have had much an idea about what I actually looked like to possibly find me attractive. And even if she did, I don't know many women who would pick up a male stranger after midnight when they're alone in their car. There were about 10 bars nearby she could have gone to if she wanted to pick up a guy. There was no reason I could think of that she would have to resort to driving around offering to pick up strangers. She continued to drive alongside me and offered me a ride again, which I declined and kept going. I picked up my pace and eventually she drove off. As soon as she was a few blocks away, I quickly got to my car and made sure there was nobody lurking around or close by. The whole scenario felt off and didn't make sense to me. I asked my friends about it later and all the women agreed they wouldn't offer a random guy a ride at nighttime in that kind of scenario, even if the guy looked like Ryan Gosling or Channing Tatum, but maybe for Ryan Reynolds. Okay, it doesn't say that here, but just an idea. My suspicion is that there was someone laid down in the back seat of the car out of view with a weapon waiting to rob anyone who accepted that ride. I couldn't really figure out any reason she would be offering rides like that to complete strangers in the middle of the night, as it would be very unsafe for her to just pick up random strangers. I just assumed that it had to be something nefarious going on in that car. And I do wonder what would have happened if anyone just hopped in the car with her. Refusing to put on my glasses after waking up ended up with 4 police officers in my room. Posted by _clonk_. Background: I'm a guy who needs glasses to see, or else I'm pretty much blind. I also live alone in a rather small 3.5 apartment on the 3rd floor. This morning I woke up as usual after a good night's sleep. I slowly wake up my eyes, starting to think about getting ready for the workday. As I open them, I see a black figure in the 6-inch crack between my door and the frame. I freeze in terror. There's a person on the other side of the room, staring at me as I was sleeping. I start to panic and have 1,000 thoughts coming at me all at the same time. What do? I stare at it without losing sight of it, without blinking, and pretending to still be sleeping. After about 10 to 15 minutes of staring, immobile, I realized that I must do something. My only rational plan was to jump out of my bed, which was practically on the ground, and hope to be able to close the door that's 3 meters away without the person being quick enough to react before me. I realize that's not a good idea, as I'm convinced the person has to be armed or have intentions of hurting me. In my mind, the only thing left to do was to phone for help, but how? My phone screen would surely give away that I'm awake, and it's on the other side of the bed, and I was laying on the side facing away from it. I then very slowly move my right arm over to the left and trying to carefully find it, I get a hold of it. Now, to turn the brightness off without having to look at it. For context, my bed covers is very thick and up to my chin at this point. Oh no, my phone's an Android and they randomly lock up and need the password to open instead of my thumbprint for security purposes. I then very slowly and carefully enter my password with it under the covers and barely seeing it. After having the phone in my hands for what seemed an eternity, I thought about what to do, as calling the police would inevitably start an irreversible and very serious process. I start to dial their number very slowly as to not show any signs of being awake. I then quickly receive an answer, but I can't hear much as I don't want to put the phone to my ear, as it would be visible to the stranger. I can't talk either because the person on the other side of the door would hear it. After the call operator telling me he can't hear me correctly, I'm frozen in panic. I need to speak louder, but I can't. Looking back, I think I must have accidentally hit the end call button with my thumb because the call ended. I then redial, and the same thing happens. They can't hear me enough to understand my address. I hang up, hoping they'd locate the call's location in time, but there's 3 apartments in this building, so they'd also need to take the time to find the right one, which is at the 3rd floor. After thinking about what to do for what seemed like an eternity, I redial for the 3rd time. This time, I hold the phone very close to my mouth while trying to conceal it under the covers and speak as softly as I can to give them my 4-digit address and street name. After a lot of back and forth to confirm the first 2 digits, the operator finally confirms the right address and tells me they'll be on their way. That's when I really start to understand that their arrival will most probably cause confrontation, similar to Paul Pelosi's home intruder attack. My thoughts and heart then raced to the moon, thinking of what would have happened when they knocked. After around 5 to 10 minutes of staring at the stranger, I finally hear them knocking at the back door. Thank God, I thought. I then wait a bit, seeing if the person would react. No, still immobile in the darkness. I then raise my head to get up and rush to my bedroom door to close it, which is when I noticed the figure vanish. I immediately realized what happened. My poor vision had blurred my TV screen, which was at the end of the bed, to appear as a shadowy figure right into the cracked door's gap. I was absolutely sure I saw it move, and also quickly seen what was a face with glasses taking a quick look at the other room. Combined with the darkness of the room and my panic, it convinced me that the TV's blur was someone. I've lived here for more than 4 years now and never had this happen to me. It was simply a coincidence of critical stupidity. Poor lighting having my head's position and poor vision blurring my TV into the exact same width as the door's opening. I didn't want to put on my glasses as they were out of reach from where I was. I then quickly put my underwear on and ran to respond to the police officers, who thought they were responding to a home intruder case. I profusely apologized over and over again, stating that I felt like the stupidest person on earth. They came over to my room and I explained and showed them what had happened. Realizing nobody was in danger apart from me and my immense stupidity, they took my information and left after having scanned the apartment for any signs of actual danger. They laughed about it once they realized what had actually happened, and most definitely laughed about me too. I know, I would have. In conclusion, I feel like the stupidest person on earth, and am deeply ashamed of having wasted 4 officers' time. But at least there's some teeny bit of positivity. It'll make for a funny story. I now realize binge reading this subreddit probably helped me in creating this imaginary encounter. Creeper outside my apartment posted by Princess Booty. A few years ago, I lived in a large apartment complex. My unit was at the very end of the first floor. A lot of strange people lived there, but seemed pretty harmless. One night, my BF was over, thankfully, and we were watching a movie. I noticed a shadow pass by the window, but then I felt like it didn't completely pass by. At that point, I start to feel like I'm being watched, and too scared to turn and look. I finally look, and I see the silhouette of a person and a pair of eyes peeking in between the space in the blinds. I told my boyfriend someone was out there, and he jumped up and we saw the person's shadow run away. My boyfriend peeks out the window and we assume he ran around the back of the building. A few minutes later, there was a knock on my door. My boyfriend and I just kind of look at each other because it's like 1 a.m. I told him not to answer because I don't want to open the door to anyone. After a minute of discussion, he's adamant on answering it, so I tell him to grab a knife. He opens the door and thought no one was there. He looked over and saw a man behind a nearby tree doing the come here motion with his hands. We called the cops and they said they would keep an eye out, but we never heard anything more. In the moment, it felt like the beginning of a scary movie. Thank you for listening to another episode of Reddit's Dark Side. Make sure to hit the alert button so you can be notified when an episode is released, Monday to Friday.